Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue, and those of you who use Octane will recognize this as the Octane Rendering Layout. And if you're also like me, you probably don't like to come here and use this that often because while it does have all the tools to use Octane, it doesn't have any of the other tools in MODO, and you have to switch to another layout to make a modeling adjustment or animation or rigging adjustment or whatever. So what we really want to do, and what this video is about, is bringing these tools into the main MODO layout. And so we want to bring the Octane rendering window, obviously, the Octane rendering toolbar, the Octane status feedback here at the bottom. If you can't see it, maybe I can scooch this up. The status feedback that shows the samples and the resolution and everything, we want to bring that over as well. And the Octane nodes panel and the Octane nodes inspector over here. Let me just scooch this down. Octane node properties panel. So there's really 5 things. 1, 2, 3, toolbar, 4, status feedback 5 that we want to bring over to the main MODO layout. So with the layouts, you can see that you can show starred only like that if you want to. But I like to go to the main MODO layout, and since version 12, I don't use any of these other layouts. I just go over here to this arrow and hide them, and only use the regular standard MODO layout for all of my work. Now, if you notice at the top, if you're not really familiar with the MODO standard layout, just give me 5 seconds to talk about how I like to use this. You got these buttons here at the top, and so this will pop out the left viewport or pop out the right viewport, or on the bottom you could pop out the bottom viewport like that. But I don't actually like to do that. I think that's kind of hacky. If you see this bar here at the top, if you click that, it's got the little arrow. You'll see these icons. It does the same thing, but all the icons are there that you want without having to go through a menu list. So if I want a left-handed UV, I just do that. If I want a right-handed, let's just say modeling stack, I go like that. Again, at the bottom, there's this bar with this little arrow. I like to keep that up, and I like to have the time always pushed, so there's always time here. And again, if I want schematic or whatever, I could just do that. So this is how I recommend working. The main viewport here, if I turn everything back off, those buttons are in white along the top, so UV, modeling, whatever. What we want to do is click the little plus button and say Custom A Expanded. Now we've got a little A there, and if I click it, it's just a blank slate. And you may have guessed correctly, this is where we're going to put the main Octane Render viewport and the toolbar and the status feedback. So to get those 3 different panels in here, we need to split this into 3 different sections. There's 2 ways to split. I can just hold down Control, and over here on this little dot, I can slice down, and you can split the viewport that way, which is really cool. You've been able to do that since MODO 1.0. And the other way over here in this little triangle, if you click, go over to viewport controls and say split vertical, you could do that too. So now I have 3 different panels here. Let's fill them up with the right panel. So over here on the triangle, under custom view, you want to do Octane Render Viewport, and there it is. And you'll notice that it has the title here, these titles, and it's really just taking up space. We don't really need that. So here is our triangle again. Under viewport controls, you'll see minimum header. We'll get rid of that title. And you'll still see this little microscopic orange pixel here, this little tiny orange triangle. You can get back to these, if you want to turn it off, you can click it off and get the title back here again. But, we don't really need it. So we're just going to hide that. And the second one here, we're going to turn this into a form view, right here, form view. And with the form view active, you have a gear, and this will let us choose under export, so the exported or available forms to us. So this list is all the available forms. They're in alphabetical order. And we want to go down to the Octane Viewport toolbar. There it is. So there's all our tools from the Octane Viewport toolbar. And again, I want to min header this to get rid of that title bar just to save space. So viewport controls, min header. Boom, done. Drag it down. You can also lock this width so you don't pull it higher. So viewport controls, lock height, not width, height. So I can't, can I lock the height? I think I locked the height. Did he lock the height? I thought I did, but it doesn't seem very locked to me. Oh no, it's locked, okay. And then the very bottom one, we want status feedback. So again, triangle, and we want to go to status feedback. And there's a very particular subsection of status feedback, kind of like the form view. If you click the gear, you'll see all the different status feedbacks we have from log views and everything else. And again, it's in alphabetical order, isn't it? I believe. No, it's not. It's not in alphabetical order. What you want to find is the Octane Render for MODO log right here. Octane Render for MODO log. Click that, and that is the one we want. So when I hit play here and am rendering, I will see the samples and the resolution and everything like that. Again, I think I'm going to min header this and lock the viewport. So min header and then squish it down. So this is all set up here, right? So if I want to pop open a modeling viewport over here, I can do that. And I can, do some modeling operations while Octane is rendering, which is pretty cool, right? So whatever, and then do this. And you wouldn't be able to do this in the Octane viewport very easily. But now that we've, integrated this into our main viewport, I can get to sculpting or rigging or whatever and mess around and edit my mesh without having to switch around to different layouts. So that is accomplished, but we are still missing the Octane nodes list and the Octane nodes properties panel. So we need to get those available to us over here. Now there's a couple ways you can do it. You can add it as a tab, like to, let's say here's our modeling tools. I can add an Octane tab here. But that's not really the way. Unfortunately, there's not really a rendering tab, right? You have like animation, you've got some game tools, and you have rigging and sculpting and topology and UV and modeling. But there's no real rendering toolbars here because there's no real rendering tools, so to speak. That's all over here in the shader tree. So what we want to do is actually use the workbench. And so here's our workbench right here. And then if I do edit workbench and I click this button here, it's going to bring up the form editor, which is the editor used to create all these different forms in MODO. And it'll bring up this workbench's slot in the form editor. So I click this, and here's the form editor. It has every form in MODO. It's super long. And down here at the bottom where it says workbench, this is this workbench. And in order to get these Octane node panel and Octane node properties panel over here, I need to do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is under new control, I'm going to click that, and I'm going to say add form reference. And you'll see these two little bars there, and it says drop. Let me just sort of expand this a little bit so you can see it. It says drop referenced form here. So what we have to do, and if I go up to the Octane drop-down window here and open up the Octane Render setup forms like this, you'll see these are the two forms I want. The nodes here and the node properties underneath. And so I'm just going to kind of pull this down so I see an empty space on the forms that I can click on. And knowing that this is here, I just need to click Find Form, and then I'm going to find the Octane Nodes form. It's about a third of the way up. So this is where we want it, and this is where it is. And so now I just have to take this and drag this bad boy all the way, painfully and slowly, all the way at the bottom, dragging, 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 all the way down so I can drop it on our form reference. And there it is. So I drop it right there. Now, you may ask, like, why would you not just duplicate it and drag it down there? Duplicate that Octane schematic left panel form and drag it down there. Well, with the reference, if you upgrade to a new version of Octane and it adds new nodes over here, this will just reference that original form. So anything added to this original one with an update or whatever will be added to the reference as well, theoretically. So we won't have to do this again. Okay, so I'm going to add a divider. So this little arrow here says add divider, add divider. Now we have this little divider here. And then I'm going to add another, you can see it here in the form editor, the little divider. And I'm going to add one more form reference there. I'm going to find the node properties, Octane node properties form by clicking. There it is. Let me just sort of collapse it so I can drag down. And again, I'm going to drag this all the way back down, 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 all the way back down. If I had a beer, I'd drink a beer. It is Friday, so beer is definitely in the picture for tonight. Okay, we are here. Drag and drop, and there it is. So now I can work within Octane within our main viewport here, our main layout. The last thing I want to do is actually, let me bring our form editor back up again. I'm going to say find form, and I'm going to click on our little A here. And we'll see it, custom A. And what's cool is it has a custom icon we could put there. And I have one, which I'll put in the Pixel Fondue blog, and you can just right click and download it. I have this in your kits folder, so users, your name, app data, roaming, Lexology, configs, and Mac, it's someplace else, but I'll show you how to get there. Anyway, you just paste that thing in there, then you select it, and now we can have our nice little Octane button there. So we have a modeling viewport and an Octane viewport. If you want to get to that config folder, you can always go to System and just say Open User Configs folder, and it'll take you right there. So that's where you want to paste that icon, right? And I tend to do the same thing for V-Ray. Like I'll do the same sort of exact process for the V-Ray layout, so I can get to V-Ray and Octane both in the same layout here. Let me just, you know, I knew I shouldn't have locked that height. I'm going to unlock that height and just sort of put that up a little bit there. Okay. Awesome. So the last thing we need to do is go over to File and say Config Save to save this to your main MODO 13 config file. And in previous versions of MODO, we were able to do something like go to a config export, and it would be able to export all the layout changes you made into its own little file. So if you ever had to delete the old main MODO config or load up a new or install a new version of MODO or reinstall a MODO on a different computer, you could just drag that exported config in there and it would have all these settings in there. Unfortunately, that is not working with the workbenches and these additional layouts, at least right now. So hopefully it will. Joe, if you're watching this, programmer at Foundry, maybe you could put that feature in there. So you do have to save the config, and unfortunately, if you blow away your config, you're probably going to have to redo this. But honestly, you could do these steps in like a minute if you had to, even though I've taken like 6 hours to do this video. But that's it. So we've got it. Unclick your edit workbench. I can pop open my schematic, and I can start my Octane Render, and I can go over here and start changing stuff. It's a good-looking teapot, I think. I don't know. It's kind of dented, actually. I think I really screwed it up.
Yum, yum!